Tessa Monroe had delivered hundreds of sealed packages for dangerous men, and until that rainy Seattle evening, she had never opened a single one. That rule had kept her alive. Cold blue-gray light hung over Elliott Bay as ferries moved through the rain, and glass towers reflected across wet streets. Cargo docks glowed farther down the waterfront, where black SUVs and expensive sedans came and went without attracting attention. Tessa worked for a private courier contractor serving wealthy clients who valued speed and discretion. Some of those clients belonged to Ronan Cross. Tessa never asked what was inside their packages. She arrived on time, followed instructions, remembered faces, and never stole. Those qualities had made her valuable enough to receive high-security assignments and earn the stable income she had spent years trying to build. Everett Sloan had been the one who recommended her. He managed logistics for several companies connected to Ronan and had always treated Tessa with almost protective concern. That evening, a secure waterfront office handed her one final parcel. It was black, compact, and heavier than it looked. Tessa checked the label. There was no destination, only her full legal name, Tessa Monroe. She assumed someone had made a mistake. Then she saw the routing code. Tessa remembered numbers unusually well, and this code belonged to a delivery she completed 3 years earlier. The package was connected to her own route history. That changed everything. She carried it to her parked car and locked the doors. For several minutes, she simply stared at it. Opening customer property could cost her job. Transporting something specifically addressed to her, without knowing why, suddenly felt worse. Tessa broke the seal. There was no cash inside, no drugs, no weapon. There was an old Polaroid photograph. Her breathing stopped. A little girl stood beside a smiling woman near a lakeside railing. Tessa recognized both faces immediately. The child was her. The woman was May Monroe, her mother. May had supposedly died in a highway accident 14 years earlier. Tessa turned the photograph over. The handwritten date was 2 years after May's funeral. Her hands began shaking. Beneath the photograph lay a small brass locker key and the burned fragment of an old shipping manifest. One surviving line contained Tessa's birth date. Another contained 2 words. Status, active. For years, Tessa had believed she was invisible outside the delivery route she worked. Someone had been tracking her instead. The thought was frightening. The photograph was worse. If its date was genuine, then May Monroe had survived the accident Tessa had spent 14 years believing killed her. Headlights appeared in the rain. A black SUV stopped several spaces away. Tessa immediately reached for the door lock. A man stepped from the vehicle. Ronan Cross. He approached alone, broad-shouldered beneath a dark coat, his expression changing the moment he saw the open package. Tessa expected anger. Instead, she saw recognition. Ronan took the burned manifest and studied its routing code. The tension in his face sharpened. That delivery channel had been shut down under his direct orders 6 years earlier. Someone had secretly brought it back. Then Ronan turned the fragment over. There was handwriting on the other side. Only 4 words. Next delivery, Tessa Monroe. The words on the burned manifest followed Tessa into Ronan Cross's shipping headquarters. Next delivery, Tessa Monroe. Ronan brought her to a secure office overlooking the Seattle waterfront, but he did not take her phone, block the door, or assign anyone to watch her. If she wanted to leave, she could. That unsettled her almost as much as the package. Dylan Hart, Ronan's security chief, pulled years of courier records from the company system and began comparing them against missing person reports and archived client data. The pattern appeared slowly. Then, all at once, several addresses Tessa had visited were near homes, offices, or temporary residences belonging to people who disappeared within weeks of her deliveries. Tessa stared at the screen. She had always believed she carried sealed parcels. Now she wondered whether she had been carrying markers. Ronan explained that an encrypted courier network had once been used to move sensitive legal files, financial records, and emergency documentation. 6 years earlier, he discovered someone had been exploiting route metadata for purposes he had never authorized. He shut the system down. The burned manifest proved someone had quietly rebuilt it. Tessa's stomach tightened as she thought about every package she had delivered without asking questions. Everett Sloan arrived before midnight. His familiar calm should have helped. He reminded Tessa that she had only followed assigned routes and could not have known how the information was being used. For a moment, his reassurance felt like the safest thing in the room. Ronan did not appear reassured. The brass key from Tessa's package was traced to an old locker facility beside the Seattle Ferry Terminal. Tessa went there with Dylan. Inside the locker were photographs, dozens of them, faces she recognized from neighborhoods, office buildings, and apartment complexes along old delivery routes. Every photograph had a date. Some were marked safe. Others carried a colder word, found. Then Tessa saw May. Her mother appeared younger than Tessa remembered her at the funeral, but there was no mistaking the face. The file used another surname. A second document identified May as part of a civilian witness support network that helped relocate people threatened by organized crime. Tessa finally understood why the highway accident might have been staged. May had needed to disappear. But another page showed something worse. Years after the staged death, May vanished again. This time there was no relocation record, no safe destination, only a missing status. One document carried the Cross family name. Tessa looked at Ronan differently when she returned. He did not pretend his family history was clean. Men from his father's generation had been involved in violence, and he knew that possibility could not be ignored. The only real answers would come from the original route archive stored at an old riverside warehouse south of Seattle. Everett immediately claimed those records had been destroyed years ago. Then he added that the relevant code would have been stored on Shelf 17. Tessa went still. No one had mentioned a shelf number. Later, she checked the locker facility's visitor log. Everett Sloan had signed it 3 days earlier. 3 days after finding Everett Sloan's signature in the locker log, Tessa Monroe stood outside an abandoned warehouse on the Duwamish Waterway and wondered how much of her life had been chosen for her. Pale afternoon light broke through the retreating rain. Steel bridges crossed the river in the distance. Cranes rose above old brick buildings, and reflections trembled across the dark water. Everett had hired her when she was desperate for steady work. Back then, his interest in her family had felt almost fatherly. Now it felt like surveillance. Ronan Cross and Dylan Hart entered the warehouse with her. Most of the building looked abandoned, but Tessa knew delivery systems well enough to notice false labels. Several storage codes were arranged in patterns that no legitimate shipping company would use. One wall inside the old freight office bothered her most. The paint was newer than everything around it. Behind it, they found a sealed archive. Route books filled metal shelves from floor to ceiling. The records changed everything. The original courier network had never been designed to hunt people. It had been designed to save them. Identification papers, emergency cash, legal documents, and relocation instructions were moved through trusted couriers so threatened witnesses could disappear without creating obvious digital trails. May Monroe had helped maintain the system. Tessa found her mother's handwriting across dozens of accounting sheets. May had helped families vanish before dangerous people could reach them. Another name appeared repeatedly, Ronan's late uncle. He had secretly funded parts of the network to repair damage caused by an older generation of Cross leadership. For Tessa, that complicated everything she thought she understood about Ronan's family. Then she found Everett's authorization codes. At first, they appeared beside May's. He had helped her, but his codes continued long after May disappeared. The system had changed. Instead of protecting relocated people, later records quietly tracked where they went. Tessa recognized addresses, apartment buildings, medical offices, neighborhoods where she had delivered ordinary-looking packages. Her work had created believable location data without ever making her suspicious. The realization hit harder than fear. She had not merely carried parcels. Someone had turned her into a tracking device. Ronan's anger sharpened when he saw how deeply his legitimate shipping network had been corrupted. Tessa blamed herself anyway. Ronan did not allow that guilt to settle easily. She had followed routes designed by people who deliberately hid their purpose from her. For the first time, their connection came from something more solid than danger, responsibility. They kept searching. Inside an old audio file, Tessa heard May's voice. Her mother sounded exhausted but controlled. She warned that the witness network had been compromised by someone trusted inside logistics. Then the recording cut out before the name was spoken. An engine sounded outside. A vehicle stopped near the loading dock. Everett entered moments later, calm as ever, claiming he had come because Tessa was in danger. Then Tessa looked down. Fresh river mud covered Everett's shoes. That dock had supposedly been inaccessible for years. And inside the opening of his coat pocket was the same black package label that had carried Tessa Monroe's name. Everett Sloan had an explanation ready before anyone accused him. He claimed the black label in his coat had come from an internal security review connected to Tessa's package. Ronan did not believe him, but suspicion was not proof. So instead of confronting Everett, Ronan quietly removed his access to active shipping systems and kept the reason private. By then, one fact was impossible to ignore. Someone knew Tessa had opened the package. Seattle was no longer safe. Every courier route, security checkpoint, and digital record might already be compromised. Ronan moved her east into the Cascade foothills, to a place so old and isolated that even most of his own men did not know existed. The safe house was a weathered cedar home beside a mountain river. Mist hung between enormous evergreen trees. Wet branches glistened beneath pale afternoon light, and distant peaks were beginning to collect early snow. Inside, a stone fireplace warmed the main room. Nothing about the house looked like part of a Mafia network. That was the point. The old witness system had used physical locations like this because they existed outside searchable digital routes. Tessa wandered to the hallway while Ronan and Dillon secured the property. Near a bedroom doorway, something carved into the wooden frame caught her attention. A child's height mark. Beside it were two small initials. TM. Tessa stopped breathing for a moment. The date beside the mark was from her childhood. She had been here before. She simply did not remember it. Later, while searching through an old storage cabinet, Tessa found May's handwriting in a maintenance notebook. Her mother had once stayed in this house with her. The realization changed something painful inside Tessa. For 14 years, part of her had believed May's hidden life meant abandonment. Now she understood the opposite. Her mother had been building layers of protection around her long before the staged accident. Ronan gave Tessa space inside the house. No guard followed her room to room. No one took her phone. He simply warned her that digital communication might be monitored. Together, they reviewed the physical files recovered from the warehouse. The more Tessa saw of Ronan, the harder it became to match him with the violence associated with his family name. He still controlled dangerous people, but he had spent years separating civilians from the consequences of that world. Ronan, in turn, began understanding something about Tessa. She was not reckless. She was unwilling to walk away while other people remained exposed. One name appeared repeatedly in May's notes. Nora Vale, an attorney who had helped witnesses disappear legally. A newer handwritten annotation suggested she might still be alive in a small mountain town beyond the river. Then the lights went out. Dillon checked the electrical system. The failure was deliberate. Through the trees, headlights appeared. A vehicle stopped at the edge of the property. It never approached. Ronan ordered no pursuit. By morning, the vehicle was gone. A black package sat on the porch. This one carried Ronan Cross's name. Inside was a photograph of Tessa asleep in the safe house only hours earlier. The photograph from the safe house proved something Ronan Cross did not want to admit. Someone inside the security world knew exactly where Tessa was. By sunrise, he ordered a complete internal audit of routes, access log vehicles, and personnel. But Tessa refused to let the investigation consume their only useful lead. Nora Vale mattered more. If anyone still alive understood what had happened to May Monroe, it was her. They traveled deeper into Cascade region, following an old road beside a mountain river until the forest opened into a small snow-dusted town. Wooden storefronts lined the main street. A narrow bridge crossed bright cold water, and fresh snow clung to rooftops beneath clear morning light. Nora's legal aid office sat above a modest bookstore. She trusted Tessa before she trusted Ronan. The Cross name carried history, and Nora remembered enough of it to remain cautious. Tessa showed her the brass key, May's handwritten records, and the old photographs. Nora's resistance changed immediately. May Monroe had survived the highway accident. That death had been staged exactly as Tessa feared. For nearly 4 years afterward, May continued helping threatened witnesses disappear under new identities. Then she discovered something worse. Someone inside the logistics network was secretly selling location data. Every person May helped relocate could eventually be found. May intended to expose whoever was responsible. Before she could, she disappeared. Nora had spent years expecting proof that May had been killed. It never came. There was no confirmed body, no final location, no verified death. For the first time in 14 years, Tessa allowed herself to imagine that her mother might still be alive. The hope frightened her almost as much as a mystery. Nora warned her that hope could be weaponized too. Then she gave them the name Tessa had already begun fearing: Everett Sloan. Everett had not simply worked inside logistics. He helped design the original routing architecture. Ronan immediately understood the implication. A duplicate tracking system could have been hidden inside ordinary delivery software for years. Every barcode scan, every route confirmation, every failed delivery. Each harmless action could have fed Everett's private database. Tessa felt sick thinking about how many people she might have unknowingly helped expose. Nora placed a sealed envelope in front of her. May had left it years earlier. Inside was a hand-drawn map of a freight transfer point on the Columbia River. There was also a warning. If Tessa ever received a package carrying her own name, the network had stopped observing her and started targeting her directly. The black parcel had never been random. May had predicted it. Ronan recognized a marina marked on the map. Everett had recently pressured several companies to acquire access rights there. A major freight transfer was scheduled during an incoming storm. Nora believed Everett intended to move the physical master database before Ronan could shut him down. Tessa made her decision. She would not remain hidden while other people were still being tracked. Then she turned May's envelope over and found one final handwritten line. If Everett still works for Cross when you read this, trust no route he gives you. For years, Tessa Monroe had survived by following routes other people chose. That ended on the road to the Columbia River. Storm clouds gathered over the wide, dark blue water as Ronan Cross, Dylan Hart, and Tessa approached the freight marina. Forested cliffs rose beyond the river. Steel docks stretched into choppy water, and cargo lights flickered beneath bands of rain moving in from the west. Everett expected them to use the main entrance. Tessa recognized the route immediately. She had driven it before. Only now did she understand why it bothered her. The road forced every vehicle past 3 fixed surveillance points before reaching the docks. May's hand-drawn map showed another way. An old service road curved behind abandoned storage buildings and entered the marina from the riverside. Tessa chose it. Ronan trusted her judgment without hesitation. That mattered. She was no longer the courier blindly obeying instructions. She was deciding where the route led. Inside a freight building, they found rows of black packages prepared for shipment. Tessa opened one. Photographs, addresses, financial records, identity documents. The next package carried Nora Vale's name. Another was labeled Dylan Hart. The network was no longer hunting only witnesses. It was targeting anyone who could expose it. Then Everett Sloan appeared. The protective man Tessa had known for years was gone. He no longer bothered pretending this was about security. For years, Everett had sold information to rival organizations, corrupt executives, and violent clients while hiding inside Ronan's shipping structure. Money had never been the only attraction. The old witness network gave him something more valuable. It told him where frightened people went when they believed nobody could find them. May had discovered what he was doing. She tried to stop him. Everett admitted that he arranged her disappearance. He refused to say whether he had killed her. Tessa nearly moved toward him before Ronan stopped her. That single restraint prevented anger from making the decision Everett wanted. Then alarms sounded across the dock. A river vessel was preparing to depart. Everett had already activated the final transfer. The physical master database was being moved under cover of the approaching storm. Destroying the packages would accomplish nothing. The server aboard the vessel could recreate every file. Everett retreated toward the dock as hired men created confusion around the loading area. Dylan moved civilians away from the conflict and blocked the main exit. Ronan stayed beside Tessa. He did not chase Everett. He understood the server mattered more. Tessa boarded the vessel and saw an old courier barcode beside the database terminal. Her pulse changed. She had seen that code before. It matched the label on the first black package addressed to her. That package had never been only a threat. It was an access key. Tessa pressed the label against the scanner. The lock system opened. Hundreds of files appeared. The first active record froze her in place. May Monroe, location confirmed. The file on the screen changed everything. May Monroe was alive, or at least someone using her identity was. The active record listed a private medical residence outside the region, along with an alias, recent payments, and a status update dated only days earlier. For one terrible moment, Tessa wanted to preserve everything, the entire database, every name, every address, every dangerous file, because somewhere inside it was the only direct path to her mother. Everett understood that immediately. From the dock, he used the one weapon more powerful than fear: hope. He made it clear that if Tessa allowed the server to leave, he could give her full access to May's location. The choice was brutal. Save the database, and hundreds of people remained exposed. Destroy it, and Tessa might lose a woman she had searched for without even knowing she was searching. Ronan did not decide for her. That mattered more than anything he could have said. He ordered Dillon to preserve whatever evidence could be copied safely and legally, then left the final decision in Tessa's hands. The database affected Ronan's empire, too. Destroying it could cost him leverage, contracts, and information worth millions. Still, he did not take the choice from her. Tessa stared at May's file. Then she remembered what Nora had told her. May had spent years helping strangers disappear because she believed no single life was worth sacrificing everyone else, even her own daughters. Tessa finally understood the lesson her mother had lived by. Love was not always holding on. Sometimes it was refusing to let fear turn other people into collateral. Tessa initiated the destruction sequence. At the same time, authenticated records were transmitted to independent attorneys and federal investigators. The central system began shutting down. Hundreds of tracking files vanished from Everett's control. His greatest source of power disappeared with them. Nora's sealed documents preserved enough secondary information to keep May's last known location alive, without leaving the wider network exposed. Everett tried to escape toward the far dock. Dillon stopped him before he reached the river. By then, the storm had begun to break. Rain softened, clouds opened above the Columbia, and pale light moved across the water. Ronan made his own decision. He disclosed how his organization had failed to detect Everett's abuse instead of burying the scandal. The admission cost him business contracts and internal influence. Tessa refused money in exchange for silence. Instead, she demanded legal support and direct notification for every civilian affected by the tracking network. Ronan agreed. What existed between them had become impossible to ignore, but neither treated surviving danger as proof of love. Trust would have to be earned after crisis, not during it. Hours later, a legitimate recovery team contacted Tessa. A woman matching May Monroe had been found alive under another identity. Tessa nearly collapsed from relief. Then the report added something disturbing. May had not been imprisoned. She had been hiding voluntarily because she believed Everett was only one piece of something larger. As officers prepared to take Everett away, he looked at Tessa one final time. Then he gave her the truth that reopened the entire mystery. He had never sent the first black package with her name on it. By early summer, Seattle looked nothing like the city where Tessa Monroe had opened the first black package. The rain had given way to bright waterfront mornings. Ferries crossed calm blue water. Green parks filled with people, and sunlight reflected from the glass towers along Elliott Bay. Tessa's life had changed with the weather. She no longer worked as a courier who accepted sealed packages without questions. Instead, she helped build a legitimate secure document service with transparent routing, independent oversight, and strict rules about what information could be collected from clients. Ronan Cross restructured part of his shipping operation, too. Everett Sloan was facing prosecution for financial crimes, conspiracy, and multiple attacks connected to the tracking network. Nora Vale spent most of her time helping survivors rebuild legal identities and secure protection. May Monroe was alive. That truth remained the hardest one for Tessa to understand. Their reunion was not simple. There were too many missing years, too many unanswered questions, and too much pain to repair in a single embrace. May explained that she had stayed hidden because revealing herself could have exposed Tessa and dozens of people connected to the old network. Tessa understood the reason. Understanding did not erase what had been lost, so they began again slowly. Ronan gave her the same freedom. He never treated what happened at the Columbia River as a reason she owed him anything. He removed compromised people from his logistics businesses, cut ties with partners who had benefited from Everett's system, and became more selective about the kind of power he was willing to protect. Tessa chose to keep seeing him, not because he had rescued her. He had not. What mattered was that when every decision became dangerous, Ronan had still allowed her to make it. That was the kind of trust Tessa had never expected to find inside his world. One afternoon, a package arrived at her new office. There was no black SUV outside, no armed man waiting, no threatening instructions. The package looked ordinary. Then Tessa saw the routing mark. Her stomach tightened. It was the same unusual symbol printed on the first package that had carried her name. Ronan was with her when she opened it. Inside was an old photograph. Everett stood beside an unidentified man outside a freight terminal years earlier. The back of the photograph contained a list of courier hubs across several American cities: Chicago, Boston, New Orleans, Phoenix. Seattle was only one location. May studied the photograph but did not recognize a man. Ronan recognized the symbol beside his name. It belonged to a criminal network his family believed had disappeared more than a decade earlier. That meant Everett had never been the entire operation. More disturbing, someone outside his network had deliberately sent Tessa the first package. Someone knew about May. Someone knew Everett was watching her. And someone knew Tessa would eventually open the package instead of delivering it blindly. For years, Tessa had survived by refusing to look inside other people's secrets. Now she understood that ignorance could be dangerous too. She had not discovered Everett by accident. Someone had chosen her to expose him. At the bottom of the new package was one final handwritten line: "Your next delivery is already on the way."